Hello everyone, and welcome back to Darkness Dreams. Tonight's story isn't about a haunted forest or a cursed doll. It's about a hostel, a simple, unassuming place to stay that hides a profound darkness behind its walls. What happened in room 13 is a nightmare you'll never forget. So stay alert, and whatever you do, keep the lights on. Our story begins with Aria and her friends. They were backpacking, living the dream, when they found themselves in a sleepy, forgotten town just as dusk began to fall. Exhausted and low on cash, they stumbled upon an old hostel. It was cheap, it was quiet, and for some reason it felt oddly inviting. The sign above the door, "The Wayfarer's Rest," creaked gently in the evening breeze. As they stepped inside, a man at the reception desk looked up. His smile was a little too perfect, his eyes a little too calm. He didn't seem surprised to see them, almost as if he'd been expecting them. "Welcome," he said, his voice smooth and even. "We have a special room available tonight, room 13. He slid a heavy, ornate brass key across the worn wooden counter. Aria's friend Liam hesitated. "Room 13, isn't that supposed to be unlucky?" The receptionist's smile widened, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Oh, no one stays there," he interrupted with a chilling cheerfulness. "It's very private." Aria, tired from the road and eager for a quiet night's sleep, picked up the key. The metal felt strangely cold against her skin. "Private is good," she whispered to herself, ignoring the uneasy feeling that had started to settle in the pit of her stomach. Her friends took another room down the hall, and Aria made her way to the end of the corridor, the number 13 glinting under the flickering hallway light. When she put the key in the lock, it turned with a heavy, grinding sound. The door creaked open, an awful groan like it hadn't been disturbed in decades. She stepped inside, and the door swung shut behind her with a definitive click. The room was stark. The walls were painted a dull, lifeless grey, and the floorboards groaned under her every step. The air was thick and cold, so still it felt like the room itself was holding its breath. She dropped her heavy backpack on the floor and sat on the edge of the old-fashioned bed. The mattress was lumpy and unwelcoming, but she was exhausted, and all she wanted was to sleep. Sleep, however, would not come. The first night she heard it. A soft knocking, seeming to come from inside the walls. It wasn't frantic, but slow and deliberate, like someone was patiently drumming their fingers on the other side. Tap, tap, tap. Then came the whisper. It was faint, barely a rustle in the silence, but it was unmistakably clear. It sounded like it was right next to her ear. "Aria, don't leave." She froze, every muscle in her body tensing. Her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought it might break through. She scanned the empty room, but there was no one there. The shadows thrown by the moonlight seemed to stretch and twist, longer and darker than they should have been. Her gaze landed on the antique mirror hanging above the dresser. She saw her own reflection, pale and wide-eyed with fear. But then something impossible happened. Her reflection smiled, a slow, predatory grin, even as her own face remained frozen in terror. panic set in. She fumbled for her phone, her fingers trembling. No signal, of course. She lunged for the door, her only thought to get out, to find her friends. She twisted the knob, pushed, pulled, but it was no use. The door wouldn't budge. It felt as though the frame had fused with the door, swallowing the keyhole, sealing her inside. She was trapped. Hours passed, or maybe it was days. Time seemed to warp and distort within the confines of those four grey walls. The single light bulb in the room would flicker and dim, and in those moments of near darkness, she would see it, a figure standing in the far corner of the room. It was tall and unnervingly thin, its form pale and ghostly. It just stood there, watching her silently with hollow eyes. She'd blink, and it would be gone. Then she'd see it again. But this time, it was closer. She soon realized with a surge of pure horror. It wasn't just appearing. It was moving toward her, stepping out from inside the mirror. The whispers grew louder, no longer a single voice, but a horrifying chorus. The voices of past guests, all trapped in this room. Some were screaming, others were pleading, crying for help. And sometimes, worst of all, they were laughing cold, hollow sound that echoed off the walls. Aria pressed herself against the cold plaster, trying to become invisible, but the shadows themselves seemed alive. They crawled along the floor, slithered under the bed, and seeped through the walls, their inky tendrils reaching for her. On a small, dusty desk in the corner, she found a stack of old photographs. They were pictures of guests who had stayed in room 13 before her. Happy travelers, smiling for the camera. But in every single photo, their eyes had been violently scratched out. Their faces were twisted into silent masks of terror. Then she noticed something else, something that made her blood run cold. She could see their shadows, faint and distorted, still lingering in the corners of her room, watching her. They were here with her. The room itself began to feel alive, a malevolent entity. The walls seemed to breathe, subtly shifting and pulsing around her. The floorboards moaned with every creak. She desperately searched for a way out, but every time she thought she found an escape, the room would change. A door would appear where there was none, but it would only lead to another identical, impossible hallway. The walls stretched into an endless corridor, and the ceiling seemed to lower, pressing down on her, suffocating her. She finally screamed, a raw, primal sound of pure terror. In the mirror, the figure was now right at the surface of the glass, its face pressed against it, its mouth opened, stretching unnaturally wide, and it whispered her name in a voice that was both hers and not hers. "You belong here now." In a final act of desperation, Aria ran to the window, her last hope for escape. But outside, there was nothing. No street, no town, no stars in the sky. Just an endless, churning void of blackness, filled with moving shadows. She slammed her fists against the glass, trying to break it, but it was like hitting a solid wall of darkness. The window wouldn't break. It wouldn't even crack. By the next morning, the hostel looked completely normal from the outside. The sun was shining, birds were singing. Inside, the door to room 13 was shut, the hallway quiet and still. Downstairs, the receptionist stood behind his desk, that same perfect, placid smile on his face, as if nothing had happened at all. Later that day, a new weary traveller walked in looking for a place to rest. The receptionist greeted them warmly. "Welcome," he said, pulling out the heavy, ornate brass key. "We have a very special room available. Room 13." He slid the key across the counter. "Enjoy your stay." And upstairs, from deep within the walls of that cursed room, Aria's screams echoed faintly, joining the chorus of the lost "If you looked closely into the mirror in the lobby, you might just see a new face appear for a fleeting moment, a face with hollow eyes and a twisted smile, trapped forever, waiting for the next guest to arrive." Remember, some rooms aren't meant to be opened, and some hostels don't just provide a place to sleep. Room 13 doesn't just trap you, it consumes you. So if you ever find yourself checking into a strange hostel late at night, be sure to check the room number carefully, because the last room might just claim you forever. Thank you for listening to Darkness Dreams. If you enjoyed this story, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next descent into terror. Until next time, stay safe.